third reason you ought to be for is that no president, not any of these three running, not me if I could serve again, nobody can bring this economy back if we keep doubling health care costs every 7 years. It cannot be done. It cannot be done. So you should be for her for the same reason the American Nurses Association departed from past precedent and endorsed her in the Democratic primary, because they said she had the only health care plan that would solve the cost problem, because you can never solve it unless you cover everybody. If you don't cover every last American, then the insurance companies will still be in the driver's seat and you'll have the cost driven up. You just have to decide whether you agree with that. But now most of you probably experience the health care crisis as a cost challenge. Just for example, raise your hand if you know somebody without any health insurance at all. Okay, so look around here. Look around. This is the only high-income country on the face of the earth where anybody would raise their hand. Because every other country has found a way to cover everybody at a cost that is 50% lower than you pay. Our manufacturers pay more than twice as much per hour to cover their workers for health care as any of our competitors. Hillary's the co-chair of the Senate Manufacturing Caucus. She thinks we can get manufacturing jobs back in America if we repeal the provisions of the tax code that encourage them to move and put some provisions in that encourage people to come in, but not if we keep doubling health care costs. Think about why not covering people adds to cost. Next time you write a check for premiums, think about this. The insurance companies take $50 billion of the money you pay every year and spend it trying not to cover you. Think of it as your uninsurance premium. I'm sorry, you have a pre-existing condition. I'm sorry you do have a policy, but it doesn't cover this thing you need right now, even though you thought it did when you bought it. I'm sorry you have a policy, it covers this thing you need, but boy, it's expensive. So I went back and looked at your application. You left line 3 blank. We're canceling you. They spend $50 billion doing that. Now, this is worse. 30 cents of every dollar you pay for health care goes to paperwork. Is there a business in town that could stay open if they blew 30% of their revenues off the top? No, they couldn't. But in our crazy healthcare system, it's profitable. Why? If you've ever filed a claim, you know this. They'll say, well, we may not cover this, or we may not cover all of it. You know they're going to pay, they know they're going to pay. This is all about getting people to come up with paper and go back and forth so they can wait 4 months to pay and earn the interest on your premium. It's good for them, but horrible for the system, 30 cents on the dollar. McKinsey & Company did a study last year which said that Americans pay $200 billion for paperwork in healthcare alone we would not pay if we took any other country's healthcare system and dropped it in America. So here's Hillary's plan. If you like what you got, you can keep it. But if you don't like it, if you don't have it, or you can't afford it anymore, you can buy into the same plan that insures members of Congress and our families and federal employees. If it's good enough for us, you ought to have access to it. Simple as that. And it's a really good deal. Because, give me an example. If you're young and single and on your own and really healthy, all you have to do is buy enough coverage to protect you if you have a car wreck or develop an unforeseen illness. It'll be very inexpensive. If you have little children and you need dental health coverage, you can get that. If you have mental health issues in your family, you can get that. How are we going to save this money? First of all, once we all have to be covered, it will be illegal to spend 1 red cent trying not to insure you. That's $50 billion right off the bat. Secondly, they will have no incentive trying not to insure you because we'll all be in huge pools where the losses will be totally predictable and people will in effect buy a piece of it. And the administrative costs will go way, way down from 30 cents on the dollar. Once there are millions of us insured, even though there are lots of choices, a simple software program will cover them all, and we'll move closer to the Medicare administrative cost. You know what it is? 3 cents on the dollar. then the savings will be taken and given to lower income working people, small businesses and family farms that are trying to help their employees, so that no one will say this is unaffordable and no one can be charged more than a fixed low percentage of their income for health care. But you have to decide whether this is important to you and whether you agree that we can no longer keep wandering around pretending that there's some fix for this other than the one all of our competitors have already adopted. And if you're tired of making excuses and you want to make progress, it turns out that doing the morally right thing to relieve the burdens on people like that woman that wheeled her child to see me is the economically essential thing. And if you believe it, you got to vote for Hillary for president because she's the only one with a plan that offers that. You ought to vote for it because she's got the best, clearest commitment on education. Universal pre-kindergarten to get our kids off to a good start. She says that No Child Left Behind hasn't worked, won't work, can't be made to work, and ought to be bad. Let me tell you, the only schools in America that are benefiting from that, maybe 5% of our schools that are severely underperforming where kids get all the way to the 8th grade and can't read. But that's not the way this was sold to you. This was sold to you as a way of leaving no child left behind on the way to the 21st century so all of your kids could learn at international levels of excellence. You want that, don't you? I mean, you want your kids in this town to learn math, science, foreign languages, technology-related subjects at international levels because you know they're in a global economy. I hope you know they can. And that is not a political statement. That is a scientific fact. Brain studies have been done now exhaustively which show that virtually every child in America, without regard to race or first language or family income, can learn whatever they need to know. The learning gap we have between ourselves, let's say in Germany or Singapore, is caused by the following factors. The kids go to school longer every year. They start the hard courses sooner. They have national standards they've worked on for decades, and relative to the other professions in those countries, they pay the teachers more, they train them harder, and they retrain them over the course of a lifetime, so they're always ahead of the curve. Now, Hillary's position is that that's a problem, this is not the answer. If you wanted to do this with a test, you'd pick a high test with a hard test with a high score. And if you did this, you'd be in the soup. Because No Child Left Behind says you got to give your kids 5 tests, 5 years in a row, and we'll give you school district money based on how they do on this test. This is nuts. You can't give a hard test with a high score or you lose your federal money. 80% of our schools already have cut back on history, on economics, on music, on the arts, in spite of the obvious evidence that many children learn more when they're also exposed to music and the arts. This is crazy. So, what's her alternative? It's easy to talk about the problem. What's her alternative? Her alternative is this. Number one, there are 2 million teachers about to retire. We should use that money to recruit, train, and place truly qualified young teachers in these subject areas, in the places where they're needed, in the rural areas, the inner city schools that otherwise wouldn't get them. Number two, we should pay more of the fair share of special education, which the federal government has never done. And number three, we should do what other successful organizations do, which try to repeat excellence. We should identify 20 high schools, 20 middle schools, 20 elementary schools in America today that are performing at world-class standards, figure out what they're doing right, and give our schools the information and support they need to replicate those things. That will work far better than No Child Left Behind. It's a bust. You need a better alternative, and she will give it to you. And let me just say this. We got a few people from Arkansas in this crowd, so you don't have to take my word for this. When I was governor, I asked Hillary to oversee our school reform program. When we started, a national expert said we had the worst schools in America, and when I came here running for president, the same guy said we had one of the 2 most improved school systems in the entire United States. She did that with no public office. She gets this, and you ought to give her a chance to do better for our children's sake. Third thing I want to say about education is